Week 17, run the North. Jason and Will here. Season's coming to an end. Another bit of a sad one for the Bears, falling 6-3 to the Seattle Seahawks in a wet one. I didn't watch the game, and I feel like I didn't miss anything. Jason, am I wrong?
Yeah, and I apologize to anyone that wasted their time watching that, because you had the two games on Wednesday, Christmas Day, which is great. You have like that the day after Christmas hangover. Most people I know sit home, you're eating extra Christmas cookies, you got tons of leftovers. All right. Night game comes on. It's the only thing on TV. 6-3 in the rain at Chicago, last home game of the year for the Bears. Coincidentally, the Seahawks are still fighting for playoff contention. Now they're out, which is good because they looked also terrible in that game. The only real highlight was that Caleb didn't get hurt. No major injuries other than our offensive line. And then, the ever resounding sell the team chants coming from the stadium were, again, resounding, loud.
I was going to say that sounded like a highlight. Maybe they were loud enough for the McCaskies to hear them. Perhaps.
Oh, I hope so. And I know it's all over social media, which I'm sure they don't have, but the Bears social media team, I'm sure they know.
Yeah.
What was interesting too is, so it was the Thursday night crew. So it's Tony, it's Fitzgerald, it's Whitworth, Sherm, Charissa Thompson. Nice. When they do their post game, something about Fitz and Sherman were doing the ice bath, but they do that segment after the game. It's kind of in the corner of the end zone, and there's always fans in the background. Well, security for Thursday night, or maybe the league or somebody, had to kick the fans out of that segment because they were all just screaming, "Sell the team" behind the Thursday night. So it was, if you couldn't hear it, the whole stadium doing it. And that's crazy because they were doing it on that 4th and 1 at the end of the game while we're on offense, which is, again, the home team crowd, you're supposed to be silent. But then DJ Moore converts the 4th and 1 on some weird fell over drag route. It's like, what is going on? But the fact that they had to boot the fans because that they kept going, it was kind of wild, dude.
Kind of a metaphor for just Bears ownership in general. They don't want to hear the fans.
Yeah, they don't care. They so don't care. And it's getting depressing, and I'm sure viewership for us is just like, okay, enough, Jason, got it. So I'm going to kind of leave that there. The other thing is, I don't really care that much because these no interception streaks for quarterbacks, it's cool to talk about, but it ultimately doesn't mean a whole lot. But Caleb's came to an end. He set the rookie record. He was number 2 in the league this year behind Herbert for not having picks. And he threw it on a 4th and 1 or 4th and 7, whatever it was, just lofted up a pick because he had the whole world in his face. And yeah, that was a shitty way to lose it, but who cares?
That's tough. Well, devil's advocate, even his receivers weren't necessarily catching his passes, let alone the defensive backs. So,
right, and you had 0 targets again for Cole Kmet. So, what are we doing? Like, you can't even take this offense seriously. And I'm also glad I didn't need DeAndre Swift for my fantasy championships. I had the option to play him at the time of this game. Neighbors was questionable. So it's like, oh, do I just put him in because he's good and playing and not see? Well, I waited, played Neighbors. Life is good. So before we get into that and talk Vikings, my 3-word is obvious. It's going to again be sell the team because there's a different note to it this time around because it was actually at the game, the highlight. So I'll take it.
Yes, beautiful. Any knee-jerk reactions coming out of that game? Any new takes? Anything that hasn't been rehashed over their 11 game lose streak? What are they at now? 9 games. So
there's nothing new. If you want to take something new, it might be the realization that the verb in the NFC North used to be the Lions are gonna lion. Well, no more. It's the Bears are gonna bear until further notice, and it's never going to be a good thing.
Yikes!
It's super sad. So they keep finding new ways to lose and fuck it up and look worse than what we thought. So it's a 10-game losing streak. I guess that's par for the course, but man, it's exhausting.
Now, here's a question for you. I know that we've breached this topic yet.
Yep.
Earlier, do you think if the Bears turn it around a little bit earlier in the season, maybe they fire Flus and things get back on track, maybe they're a fringe playoff team, does Ryan Poles have a job? And I guess I should back up and say, is Ryan Poles, what percentage chance are you putting at him having a job or I should say, what percentage chance is he going to get fired this offseason? And do you think that could have been prevented if the team turns things around after the Flu's firing? Let's start with number one. What are the chances he gets fired? What's the percent chances he's getting fired?
All right. So right now, I think it's like 70-30 that he's gone. That's just based on emotion. So I'm going to pin that, and here's what I'm hoping for. Either way, his employment is going to depend on who the coach is going to be, whether it's a guy that they all like. I'm not sure who's actually going to be that attracted to this job, understanding not from the quarterback standpoint, but understanding ownership and the hierarchy and having to do to Kevin Warren, who's not a football guy. That's just another layer of mess, right? So what I'm looking for is Detroit to win tonight. Unfortunately for you, I'm looking for them to win against Minnesota, because if they do that, they are guaranteed the first round bye. And what happens then? You can't interview a coach till his season's over. The only exception is to the regular season's over. If the team's in the playoffs, you can't interview them unless they're on that bye week. So that's the first chance we'll get to interview Ben Johnson. If they don't have the bye week, we have to wait until their season is over.
Okay.
Ben Johnson is thought to bring, if he gets the job, he's going to want to bring in Agnew, who is a guy that was in the front office. He's the assistant GM in Detroit. And in that case, then Poles would definitely be gone. Similar scenario for if they interview Vrabel. He'd probably want to bring in his own guy. They might want to bring in Josh McDaniels, which would be kind of nuts for the offensive coordinator.
Josh McDaniel, really?
Yeah, because they were together with the Patriots, and that's all rumor mill. And what do I know? I'm not plugged in, right?
Sure.
So that's what I'm thinking, kind of hoping. Poles, I like the guy. I like what he did with the books, but the offensive line, the fact that you played offensive line and you can't get it right, like that's the most avoid thing. You even said in your introductory press conference that that's where you're going to start this team, and you just completely neglected the whole thing. So, like him, but who knows? The Flus thing, you should have fired him. You shouldn't have let him into the season this year. Like, we knew that, but you're going in starting year 3 of a 5-year contract. Okay, it's understood to me that the ownership wanted to keep him. And when we had that firing, when he got fired in the middle of the season and he had that press conference that morning, and then he got fired after that morning, is because it sounds like Warren and Poles were like, yeah, he's done. But they had to wait for McCaskey to get into the building, to have the meeting, to have the conversation, to finalize the decision. It's like, well, why the hell would you need? Yeah, you need a final sign off, but that should be, hey, I'm firing him just so you know, as opposed to not. Like, that's how the real football guy should run this. And another reason why you got too much going on for decision making. Now, your fault, Poles, for letting it go into the season. I want to know, of all of the questions, I want to know, did you hire him or were you overruled and told to keep him? That will tell me if I want to keep him or not.
Yeah.
I'll never get the answer, but there's so many trickle effects, because then that by association, you're proving that either you were independent or you were told to do all your stuff and you really had no control or say in the first place. Since they decided to move forward with the season, we were 4-2. We had crushed the Panthers. We had crushed the Jags in London, like 40-point games back to back, something close to that. So we're riding high, playing shit teams, but it's like, okay, we can do this. And then you put up 3 points against the Patriots. You should have fired him after that game, but you didn't. Then you went to the Fail Mary. Didn't fire him after that. Then it was Arizona. Didn't fire him after that. You got embarrassed. It was 27-3 again. Should have fired him after all 3 of those opportunities. So yeah, had they done it sooner, maybe they chose to get rid of Waldron in there, and that was the scapegoat, but it just kept spiraling.
Yeah.
If you're going to do Waldron, you got to do, I mean, they were trying to save face, but again, there's no real answer, because we're seeing, they have 18 captains. The Bears do. That's too many.
Seems like a lot.
Like, you should either have one team captain or you should have one special teams, one offense, one defense. Like that, you shouldn't have that. But if you have eight team captains, not a single one of them is an offensive lineman. What does that tell you? So it's just, you got too many cooks in the kitchen. It seems like Flus had this thing called the Leadership Council, which was more people involved than just the captains. So it ended up being like half the roster was on the Leadership Council. It's like, what are we doing? So I don't think you're saving that. I don't think firing him sooner or later. Like, I think there's a different outcome if you fire him before the season starts and you start fresh. Oh, wait, like you were supposed to, you align a GM with a head coach with a new quarterback. But they decided to do the draft the quarterback thing, lame duck head coach, and now we're again perpetual cycle of being fucked. It didn't go back. So Caleb, Fields, Trubisky. Then it was Cutler when we brought him in. Before that, they did the same thing to Rex, Grossman, asinine, crazy. But they're also insulated in a vacuum. So no, I don't think anything changes.
So you don't think
sooner.
but if the team approves after the Waldron firing or the Flus firing, again, they get to a fringe playoff team, say they even make the playoffs. Do you you don't think that improves his chances at all at keeping the job? Do you think it's still just
if we had made the playoffs?
Bust?
Yeah, but you're not making the playoffs because you look at our division. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, even if we're 9-8 right now, we're not even in the conversation. Even if we split half our division games, yeah, maybe that changes the top three right now being you guys, Detroit, and Green Bay. So maybe it's a little bit closer. But even then, a 9-8, you need 10 wins to get into the playoffs, and that's 9-8 is a 5-game swing, dude. Like, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I just don't think. I don't think it's as realistic as some people hoped. Yeah, obviously we were talking about. Yeah, I thought they're going to be a 500 team this year, maybe 1-4 above, 1 below as we're in the preseason coming into this year. But you just see how quickly, like, it's a cancer, it's a disease. It really is not that easy to overcome. And it's like, oh, Bears look good on paper. Well, you can't solve their problems on paper either. It takes men to do it, and obviously we're lacking in that department too.
Yeah, well, maybe Poles is just a hatchet man, as they say in management. He came in, just cut out all the contracts, fired a bunch of people, made some trades, and maybe that's all he's good for is getting the books back on track, and then you move forward with Ben Johnson and his GM guy or whoever in their GM guy to actually build a winning roster. Maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe the McCaskies are playing the long game.
Oh, come on now. So it was the plan all along to suck for the pick and to then rebuild. And we did that. And on paper, it's great. We have draft capital. We have, balanced books. We have good cap space. We have no lopsided contracts if they're all pretty decent contracts and they're not push money out in the future. They're all right now. I'm paying you a flat rate. Like, this is what it is. It's interesting to me because obviously the head coach should be running the show, making decisions on players. Contracts maybe need some help with that, but like, you're the personality of the team. We still don't have an identity to the team. Big no. 3 years into the Flus experiment. So it's how many teams are run? Yeah, the GM makes the picks, signs the contracts, builds the roster, does the books, right? But that's really the coach driving it. It feels like too many people in the kitchen, like by the board. There's a board of everybody like that. How many teams are actually run like that? None. How many teams are taken seriously that run like that? None. Like, you look at Green Bay, LaFleur, Gutekunst, that's it. You don't hear about anybody else. Same thing with the Niners, for better or worse. Like, you don't hear about anybody else. You don't hear anybody above KOC and Kwesi. Yeah, you hear about the Wirfs, but usually that's not a good thing. But that's not a frequent and like control, like the conversations. Like, you cannot get away from this narrative. Like, it's like, oh yeah, the Wirfs, but we know it's it's Kwesi. Like, we know.
Yeah.
How many are so meddling? Even the Jags, like, Khan, Dallas, Jerry Jones, but that's a little bit different because he's the only one that runs it that way. But he's still not going through a board. He's saying, fuck you, that's my team, that's my son, that's my team. I'm going to land my fucking chopper on the practice field, and I'm doing what I want. So at least we know who's meddling, right?
Yeah.
So it's anyway.
That's the nature of bureaucracy, right? You add more people so that you can spread the blame out, but then also the more people you add, the slower decisions get made. So you're less effective, and then when things inevitably don't work, you can blame more people. Like, it's the nature of the beast when you have a bureaucracy like the Chicago Bears have.
Yeah. And he's so disconnected from the product of football. He's only worried about collecting his checks and that his image looks good. But his image is like, no, I'm just the everyman. I'm a fan. I'm not a football evaluator. I don't know. So like, he's actively choosing ignorance over like integrity and ownership. It's like, we know you heard us. You suck. Sell the team. Like, well, I'm not going to do that. And
would you prefer he was Woody Johnson evaluating personnel decisions based off Madden ratings?
Yes, I would like that. It's ridiculous, but at least we know what his decision-making process is. It's flawed and fucked up, fine, but we don't even know. We don't even know. So here's the question I'm going to ask to you, because I've been sitting on it for about a week and I have no idea still. From a Obviously I'm talking about the McCaskies and the Bears, but from like a general business perspective, in places that you've worked, you come in, bad product, bad team, bad leadership. How do you change the perception? They hate me. They know I'm not good at it. They know like we're not producing. I've been this for 13 years. There's no results. How do I show that I'm actually worth my salt, that this is a product you can stand behind, that this is a place you should be sending your money?
I do not have a good answer for you. I think he could start by selling the team.
So that's probably going to be my barometer for how I approach this offseason, because we have, week 18, Bears are done on Sunday, the 5th, and then Black Friday is or Black Monday, excuse me, is the 6th. Everybody gets fired. So we'll see if Poles has a job. We know it's not going to be Thomas Brown. We know they need a head coach. So from that point on, it's like, does this decision, does it move the needle to making him look better at actually building something? Or does it just look good on paper? Because any hire, they're gonna be like, well, this is our guy, he's our man, da 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 da. It's like, well, you can pretty much, we are now bullshit proof as fans. Like, we just know that
you'll believe it when you see it.
Yeah, so I think that's gonna be my barometer. And that's something that, fortunately, you guys haven't had to deal with for a long time. The Packers haven't had to deal with for a long time. And it's the first time. So I'm now just taking this away. My 3-word was sell the team, da da da. I'm done talking Bears, done fielding questions. Let's move on to a more important game. This is the first game going Vikings, Packers. It was a 3:00 game on Sunday. This is the first time where they're both 11+ win teams playing each other. Obviously, this is huge for playoff seeding, because 2 of the 3 teams are like, all 3 teams in the North are going to the playoffs. It's just who's the wild card, who's traveling where, or do you get the bye for Detroit and Minnesota? So ton on the line, really exciting. Vikes started out strong and solid, and then it was, oh my gosh. So talk me through your experience. Talk like the emotional roller coaster. What'd you see throughout the game you liked, you didn't like? You feel like you're ready for the playoffs? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, super exciting game. I went into it and I was just thinking about the range of outcomes for this game going into it. I was like, there's a chance that like the Vikings totally beat the brakes off of the Packers like they did in the first meetup, at least in that first half. There's a chance we totally wipe them out. And me as a totally unbiased fan would have loved to see that. However, then I kept thinking, I was like, there's a chance the Vikings don't show up to play. I've seen it happen a bunch of times where we just don't seem like we're ready to play. That being said, it was a pretty good beating. I would say for 80% of the game, the Vikings were giving it to the Packers. And then that inevitable prevent defense comes in. We're up 3 scores with like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and we end the game winning by 2 points on an offensive play and an offensive drive that was a little sketchier than it needed to be. That was carried by, our fullback getting a 9-yard reception and our backup running back making a shoelace grab to seal the game on like a 2-yard dump off. Didn't need to be like that. Backing up, I think the officiating was just really weird for both sides. It seemed like they were, like there were bad calls going each way. There was calls that really pissed me off in the beginning that had me saying things like refs got money on the Packers. And then they made some other calls against the Packers. And I was like, maybe the refs just suck. Or maybe it's just like they're trying to keep it close to like cover the spread or whatever. So some weird officiating things. It seemed to somewhat even out, although I think in my head, I still had the Vikings down like one bad call to the Packers. So like the Packers, okay. I thought were privileged to the extent of like one extra call. I thought is where that netted out, but
which is usually par for the course in any division game. It's usually the Packers getting those calls, no matter who they're playing.
Mm-hmm. It was, there was just some really weird bogus calls. The weird blocking call on Harrison Smith, like they said he went to the knees, but like he hits this lineman in the midsection. Even it was just a very strange call. I think there was a very ticky-tacky is even generous. I would go as far as to say non-existent defensive pass interference call on Byron Murphy on just a clean play on the ball. I mean, he plays the ball, gets his hand on the ball. It's like, if you can't play defense like that, I don't know how you're supposed to defend the pass. I mean, he makes a little contact with the receiver, but he's going to get the ball, and he gets his hand on the ball. It's like, what? I didn't like that one. But then the Packers get called on this weird offsides penalty on a 4th down. It was just a weird game. Vikings did survive 2 missed field goals in the midst of all that. I think even did the Packers miss one? I want to say the Packers missed one too. Yeah. There's some weirdness there, but big headline. Sam Darnold just looked great. I mean, it really seemed like he's put together all the pieces. It's taken him all season to put all these pieces together, and it seems like he's finally, like, he's internalized everything. He doesn't have to think about it, and he's just kind of in this flow state at this point. And it was just last week I thought was Sam Darnold's best game. I don't know that this one would necessarily be better than last week, but this might have been my favorite Sam Darnold game. I thought he looked really good. He had command of the game. You could tell he had command of the offense. Same theme as last week, where it just seems like it's clicked, where he's no longer having to think about what he's doing, if this is right or wrong. And, it was great. 370 some yards, 3 tutties.
Only got sacked once.
Oh, really? Yeah. Only 1 sack. Just a great game for Sam. And you see, though, I'm sure you saw the clip of him being received into the locker room by the teammates, all just dousing him with the water. Just, I don't know if you saw also the picture of then KOC looking on as they got Sam in the middle of this pile. Do you know what picture I'm talking about?
Not offhand. Tell me about it.
I'll send it to you. It's just KOC from the kind of on the edge of the locker room, looking at Sam being lifted in the middle of this group of men. He's just got this little grin on his face, like
it's proud dad moment.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Proud dad moment. He's just like, I knew he had it in him.
That's my guy.
So yeah, that was a game. Jordan Love looked bad. He did not look he had like 60 passing yards through the first half. Really not his only offensive output really came against that prevent defense on their last 2 offensive drives. So that's great. I would love it if he's just a completely mediocre quarterback that traps them in a spiral of mediocrity. That's like I don't even want him to suck bad enough to get rid of him. I would just love him to be perfectly mediocre. So that was great. And I have a few thoughts beyond the game, but that was essentially the game as I saw it. I think one thing I want to talk about is Sam Darnold. Going further on Sam Darnold, because it's been growing for a few weeks now, and I'm getting on the train. But this growing crowd of people saying, "Hey, we got to keep Sam Darnold."
Yeah, you pay him. You give him better. I think you give him you don't give him the Tua or the Burrow or the Trevor Lawrence. You give him the Kirk Cousins, or you give him the Daniel Jones, which is 4 years, $40 million a year. So that's 160. Like, can't give him 50 million. Like, someone else will pay him for sure. You got to get him on a discount. You can't be the reason. He can't be the reason you strap the team.
Right.
I don't think you can let him walk.
Okay.
How he performs, but I don't think you can let him walk.
I'll say this. This is a perfect example, though, of how I think short memory and like emotional fans are, because recency bias. Absolutely. Because I'll go back to the episodes we had in the middle of the season. The only reason we were winning games is because of Brian Flores' defense. It wasn't because of Sam Darnold. He was not keeping us in. I mean, he didn't blow it, but he wasn't winning those games for us. That was the defense. And so I'm not so quick to be like, we need to keep this guy. I certainly hope we don't throw the bag at him, to your point of what do you call it? Like hamstring of the team or
you can't strap them for cash.
Strap,
you have ability still with that team, because we know you've got the new quarterback coming. You want JJ to learn, but let him sit. I mean, like that's
like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers did. Right. I will say it will come down to how he performs in the playoffs. If he continues his command of the offense and he has some of those, just epic games where he does have the team on his back and he's carrying the team with some really big performances where he's displaying the command of this offense, I mean, I think you got to make an honest effort to keep him. And again, I think given this redemption arc and who Sam is, I mean, he's not a flashy guy. Even after these big wins, he's honestly a little awkward. He's not.
Yeah.
He doesn't strike me as a guy that's just going to go chase a bag. I think he'll want to get paid more, but like, is he willing to stay in Minnesota for less money than other organizations? Yes. Does he strike me as a guy that is kind of got that Tom Brady, like he understands that if he takes less, the team will be good and then they can keep winning, and he's willing to take a pay cut to play on a team where he can have sustained long-term success? I think he is that kind of guy. I could be wrong.
That's a Minnesotan answer if I ever
It is.
heard
Well,
that.
you listen to a guy talk. He just doesn't strike me as a bag chaser. Someone like Jordan Addison. You know, he gets drafted. He gets on the mic and he says, "Let's get paid." Like, okay, that's a bag chaser. He's not taking any hometown discount. He's like, feed me the ball and then pay me as much money as you can. Otherwise, I'll find someone that can.
Right.
Darnold just
which
doesn't.
is going to be an issue for them in the next year or 2 years. Absolutely.
Yeah. Which, you know, I don't know that you necessarily re-sign Jordan Addison for a premium. Or like, I'm sure there's a team that's going to be willing to pay Jordan Addison more. And I think given the Vikings' success with drafting receivers, I lean more towards replacing Jordan Addison.
But like, does he become like right there? So you have Jefferson and you have Addison. Is that duo better than? I'm using the example of a duo that's already been paid. So AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, or is he better than Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle? Because I don't think they're not better than Chase and Higgins, but Higgins is not paid and he's going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to think about like money spent on a receiving duo. Where's your value? And you don't have to answer that, but it's like that's what I'm starting to think about as I'm going. Or Ayuk Debo, right? Like that one's not close. Like I think you put Addison Jefferson above that, and that's kind of your floor.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got those other 2 or 3 to think about. So I think that's going to be where your cost analysis, your player comp, is it really worth it or not? Evans, Godwin, you know, when healthy, sick. But anyway, not stealing the thunder on that.
No, and I mean, to expand on that, I think with the direction the league is going, which it seems to be turning back into a running league, you know, with the 2 high safeties, and look at the year that Saquon's having, you know, the year that Derrick Henry's having, hell, the year that Josh Jacobs is having. It's turning back into a running back focused league. And to that point, do you want to spend a lot of money on a wide receiver too, especially when he's across the field from Justin Jefferson? So you know he's not going to have, like, he's going to begin. Justin Jefferson's has gravity to him. I don't think you need that much talent on the other side. It's nice to have, but like, do you need it if the league's going to be more running focused?
Well,
I don't think so.
Hawkinson, you're already paying Aaron
You're
Jones.
already paying Hawkinson. Exactly.
You got 2 offensive linemen over $20 million. And then if you pay Darnold, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have to pay somebody on defense, especially because you guys haven't had a high paid defensive back in forever. I mean, Harrison Smith isn't making top money.
No.
And then if Flores gets a head job somewhere else, like, you got to compensate on defense, getting some more talent in there, because you guys admittedly have outperformed your talent level.
100%.
Before we get too much further, do you have a 3-word analysis for this game? The reason I'm asking is because I got some questions and I don't want to influence it. So what do you think your 3-word for the game is?
You know, it's going off of what we just talked about. And I think the 3 words is here to stay, in reference to Sam Darnold.
All right.
Just because that just swung. You know, if you're looking at it from a percentage standpoint of how likely he is to be in Minnesota next season, I think there was a jump last week. I think there was a bigger jump this week.
Is it because of recency bias, you think?
Yeah, 100%. But like, that's how people make decisions, you know. And again, if he carries us into the playoffs, if he is truly just gotten to the point where he's become expert level or master level in this offense, and he's able to execute, and it's a complicated offense, right? This isn't what Jaden Daniels is running, where he's got one read. He's making a lot of reads on a play, and that's hard to do. And if he can show competency, not even just competency, but proficiency at doing these multi-level reads that KOC kind of commands in this offense, it's like, it's hard. It's hard to get rid of that, especially when you think of the risk of, okay, you're pretty much KOC and Kwesi are essentially betting the farm on JJ McCarthy at that point. And if that goes wrong, that's how you lose your job. I don't I think if you're thinking from like a job safety standpoint, KOC and Kwesi are going to be really incentivized to keep Sam Darnold just for their own jobs, just because the flip side, the really dangerous part, like, maybe if you're freaking Dan Campbell, you just roll the dice and say, screw it, I have faith in this next guy. But I think if you're doing a little more risk assessment, it's like, well, we have more to lose by moving on from Sam Darnold than we have to gain.
Sure.
So, but anyway, here to stay. 3 words.
I like it. I like it. Okay. What were some of your other points? Because I have three based questions, all kind of a little bit over the board from this game and go forward. So maybe you'll bring up some of those topics. Maybe I'll
I have one more thing I'll say.
Yeah,
I think maybe I was texting you this, but the only other thing I was going to talk about are those 3 missed kicks from my boy Will Reichard. Yep. Again, I don't think that leg's going to be is going to be fully healed from that injury. It was like some deep tissue hamstring thigh injury. I just don't think he's fully recovered. I feel like his leg is probably at like 80-90%. And because he left that 157-yarder short. We've seen him kick longer. We've seen it when he hit that 58-yarder earlier this season. It had another like 5 yards on it. So it makes me think he just doesn't have all the strength back. So that's my take. I'm not worried about Will Reichard. He might be a little iffy to end the season. Like maybe we don't kick 58-yarders. Maybe we do after the bye. I don't know, but I'm not worried about it.
After the bye, I saw you sneak that in there.
Yeah, I'm just assuming we're going to beat the Lions next week. Okay. That's my last thought on there. Not worried about Will Reichard. I think. Okay,
because that was one of my questions I've got here.
I figured he might, because you love grilling me about.
Well, that's your guy. You planted your flag on him early, so we're going to keep following up for better or for worse, because we praised him after he won a couple. You had, was it John Ramos or something?
John Parker Romo, yeah.
John Romo, there you go. Close enough. Are we going to have to get him back in the mix? Because really, you have, this week was in a dome. Next week against Detroit, it's going to be in a dome. After that, playoffs, what are we talking about? You have Philly and Washington, depending on where you go, those are outside. Tampa's outside. Atlanta's in a dome. The Rams are in a dome. So it could be a couple of different things. All those, well, no. If you go out south, you're fine. If you go out east, it's shitty weather, where just the leg strength matters. So, what I'm leading towards is, I don't want to see you have that Blair Walsh against the Seahawks type of kick. That would be it. That's a brutal way to go again. So is that something, like me as a GM, I'm not saying he's not my kicker after that, but you got to probably bring in some guys, because you need to be able to kick 58 yards in the cold.
The Bears haven't had a kicker that can kick 58 yards for how many seasons?
Oh, since Robbie, which again, he didn't start his career out that way, but he finished it before he went to the Niners. But yeah, I agree. And that's, so even in this last game, we had a 55-yard, or it was a 54-yard kick line, and we couldn't get to that. It's like, well, if you don't have a guy that can kick 57, because it would have been a 58-yarder. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that's something in today's day and age. Apparently, the last 2 years, kick it. Well, our guy can't get it that far. Mm-hmm. Which on this roster right now, that's fine. You're losing games by that. You're not gonna. It's not like you're that truly that playoff contention worthy anyway, to where it does matter so much more. But not maybe next year, maybe after next season, after 25 going to 26, then we'll worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not worried about the kicker situation. I don't even think they need to bring anyone in. I don't know. I'm not concerned. I think they'll be fine with Will Reichard through the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe he re-aggravated it on that 57-yard kick, and they need to. I don't know. I personally am not worried about it.
Well, maybe Daddy does need that bye. We'll see. All right, I've got two questions for you. One is about the Packers. The other is about Brian Flores. Where do you want to start?
Stock Packers.
Okay. So week 5 or 6, you played 31-29 win. Mm-hmm. 2-point victory. Same thing here.
Yep.
How's this game going to go? You play them a third time in the playoffs.
Well, if I had to guess, I'd say 2-point victory for the Vikings.
It's so hard, not just to play the division, but to play a team a third time and win all 3 times. It's really hard to do. That's why I'm asking the question.
I think we win. If anything, I think we would win more handily.
Okay.
Jordan Love just does not seem to fare well against the Brian Flores defense. Josh Jacobs really didn't. He had a few good runs. If they could have stuck with the run game, they probably could have stayed in it. But just the early success that Sam Darnold had against the Packers allows them to build that lead. And once they get that, I think if you take that lead away from the Packers and they can't lean on their run game, they're in a lot of trouble, especially when you're forcing Jordan Love to pass against Brian Flores, which is what we've seen. Maybe he gets better. I don't know. Packers, are they going to get Jair Alexander back this year? I don't know what's going on there. Seems to be some controversy between him and the coach. Who knows? Their secondary might not be getting any better. They were out Christian Watson. Is he going to come back? Who knows? You saw Dontavian Wicks get shaken up. Not sure if that's going to be a thing that sticks around. But I would love to draw the Packers in the playoffs. I think that would be cool.
You need to either get the first round bye or it would be in the second or third round,
Yeah. So no, yeah, I would that would be one of like my more preferred like I think I'd rather play the Packers than the Buccaneers, honestly.
Okay, tell me more.
I'm just more scared of Baker Mayfield. He's spitting vinegar, pissing hot. Packers just haven't given me just the beatdowns we've put on them through like 4, 5, 6 quarters this season just makes me not as afraid of them. Okay. And Baker Mayfield just kind of has our number through, God, did we even play him this year? I'm trying to think. I don't think we
last year.
Yeah, last year they boomed us week 1. I think even the year before that they got us too.
Okay.
I don't know. Baker Mayfield is just like, if he's feeling it, he can tear you apart. And he's a veteran quarterback that might not get fooled by the Brian Flores defense. So that's really my main concern. Okay. And the Packers, again, just don't scare me. They'd be one of my preferred matchups in the playoffs.
Fair enough. Because it could be Tampa. If it's Atlanta, I think that's going to be, no one's afraid of them.
No. Yeah.
But all right. So then the other question I had was going to be around Flores, and you have these exotic blitzes. It's 3 down for the most part. A lot of their defense goes through their outside linebackers and their edge rush as opposed to their interior, their backers, anything like that.
Yeah.
So we talked about, in my opinion, at the beginning of the year, is that this is going to be a good defense. It's going to be built really well for the regular season. It's going to produce a lot of wins, which it has. I mean, you guys are 14-2. That's pretty sweet. And 2/3 of the year, half the year for sure, maybe 2/3 of the year, the defense carried a lot of this. We talked about that at length.
Yes.
So my question is, we don't see a lot of defenses playing this style. So say he leaves to become a head coach. Obviously, that team is probably going to adopt his style. Vikings, if they're smart, probably keep it. So that's 2 teams, but not many others. This is a copycat league. Like, we see a lot of teams, especially on offense. We saw, a decade ago, it was the Wildcat. And now we're seeing all of the West Coast outside zone runs. And now we're seeing, play action pass bombs. And then, like we talked about earlier, this year, really the analytics are showing go back to the run because a lot of too high shell, like you were talking about. Do we think that this defense, especially because it's able to get a lot out of less talent, is going to be more prevalent throughout the league next year? Are teams going to start building this way? What do you think?
I think what we're doing isn't easily replicable. If I'm going out on a limb, and I don't know this for sure, but I think one of the biggest glaring changes to me from this season to last season is this season we can stop the run, which last year we could not do. Teams could run up the middle for 5 or 6 yards on us at will every game. Did not matter the team. I think what Brian Flores has done well is coach these interior line guys that they don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but something you do hear them mention in interviews, like I was in the car, I heard K-Fan interviewing Harrison Phillips, our nose tackle. Mm-hmm. And something I've heard outside of not just that interviews, but is talking about how they're coached to play the run, where um, I'm not inside locker rooms. I'm not an NFL coach, but I do wonder that with D linemen, if sometimes things are just dumbed down for them and they just say, hey, go get the quarterback this way or that way. And it does seem like you watch the games, they, from an amateur perspective, looks like they have really good gap integrity. And if nothing else, the results speak for themselves. I think we're like the number one rush defense in the NFL. And maybe that's by virtue of us also on the flip side of that, holding a lead.
Playing from behind.
Right. Yeah. We hold a lead for more time than I think almost every other team in the NFL. So the two things feed into each other, but also, the teams have been pretty good at stopping the run. So, I think that comes down to coaching. I think that's being able to impress upon these defensive linemen how they need to play and how they need to look at things.
Well, I'll put you that too with the comment about playing ahead behind. For context, the 10-game losing streak for the Bears, 10 games, that's 40 quarters. 40 quarters times 15 minutes is a lot of minutes. Of those 10 games, we have held a lead for 17 minutes and 28 seconds or something very close to that.
Yikes.
So as a result, not as a result, but as you would expect, we have no rushing attack at all.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. Well, and also sacked a ton. It's a miracle Caleb's still upright and has played in every game. I can't think of a season where the Bears have had a quarterback start and finish a season like the whole year. I digress back to the point of having a lead and a different structure of the defense.
Mm-hmm. No, just as far as are we going to see more teams try and copycat it? I'm sure there's going to be more of that. More disguise. I feel like I see more even just when I'm watching on. Watching on Sunday, Thursday, whenever, I feel like you see more of these safeties coming up to the line then backing off, or same thing with the linebackers, which I feel like that's a pretty easy thing to do, even if it's just like, hey, if you're just spying the quarterback, just like before he snaps the ball, go up there and look like you're going to blitz and then just like back off. Like, I feel like that's not hard to coach.
I'm trying to disrupt your look.
Yeah. So I feel like you got to see more of that. Just from a layman's perspective, it seems like that would be really easy to implement.
Walk three more up, so you have 7 on the line.
Right. Yeah. That's one of those things I'm just surprised we don't see more of, because it seems like a simple concept where it's like, hey, show this, but then drop into this. That being said, I don't think teams are going to be able to replicate the success that Flores had. I mean, I think he's just a good coach. I think something we've talked about this year is like, this year seems to have really proved out that like coaching matters in the NFL, and it's not just a talent thing. It's large. Coaching plays a huge part in the success of a team and like getting the most out of that talent. And to your point, the Vikings defense didn't have a lot of talent, and we got a ton of production from it. I think that's a credit to Brian Flores. I don't think that's something a lot of defensive coordinators are going to be able to replicate necessarily. They can make it look the same, but they might not get the same results.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it'd be crazy to see how much more liberty y'all can take when you finally get some good corners. Because if you can get guys on an island, you can send one more. You don't need to keep giving them help. You can get more exotic looks. You can drop safeties down, take out, definitely fill the run lanes, but you can rob things too, put more pressure. So that's something I'm excited to see, because, I playing safety in college, like that type of shit is so much more fun as opposed to just lining up a base and like, I'm better than you. Like, yeah, that's cool, but let's play some games. Let's have some fun with it.
Yeah, 100%. And, we're down 2 cornerbacks going into the season. One, Mekhi Blackman season-ending injury and camp, and then who's that rookie that died in the Kyrie Jackson? Yeah, died in camp, 4th-round pick. So yeah, if I was looking in the future, I imagine free agency, we're probably spending more money on a defensive back. I don't know that Stephon Gilmore or Shaq Griffin are going to be here next year. They kind of seem like mercenaries. But yeah, to your point, if we could get a premier guy, to put on the other end of the team's best wide receiver, I think that opens things up a lot for the defense.
Yeah. So I had one other thing and I lost the article, so I'm scrambling to find it here. I just thought of it. Obviously, with 1 week left, we are going to cement a lot of different draft orders. Obviously, we're going 1 through 16, right? Because the other 14 make the playoffs. Did you notice who won games last week?
Giants won
this week. The Giants won, the Raiders won. So that totally screws up what you'd expect for who's fighting for Shador. So as it stands,
Are people
the
fighting for Shador?
Lions.
Is that who people want?
That's what teams want. And that's the only real quarterback. And honestly, this is not a very good draft for many positions. I feel like I heard someone say there's only like 12 to 14 first round grades this year.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of depth. I don't know. And you got a lot of those kids that are still like the 7th year, 8-year seniors, the 27-year-old
Right.
rookies, So through this all, I'm going to try and rip through this quick. The North currently sitting with one game to play. And I'm also, when you look at these matchups for next week, week 18, there are like no matchups of like two teams with 4 wins. It's all like a playoff team versus a shit team. It's all a 3-win team versus a 9-win team. It's very funny that way. So maybe one of these teams gets lucky because a playoff team sits a lot of guys. Maybe not. We'll talk about that next week about what the strategy should be. But so number 1 overall pick, it was the Giants, and not too far behind was the Raiders. Now, number 1 pick, New England Patriots. Number 2 pick, Titans. Number 3 pick, Browns. Number 4 pick, Giants. I say that cluster because they're all 3-13.
Mm-hmm.
4-12, the 5th pick, you have Jacksonville. 6th pick, Carolina. 7th pick, the Jets. 8th pick, the Raiders. 9th pick, the Bears. So depending on how the Bears game goes next week at week 18 and the rest of the week finishes up, we have the worst pick we can have by record is the 10th pick. The best pick we can get is the 4th pick. If we lose and a lot of these other teams win, very unlikely. But so we'll have a top 10 pick.
Sure.
Which,
maybe you'll get a first rounder. Yeah. If there's only 12 guys with the first round, great. I mean,
yeah, trading back, yeah, something like that. We'll see. But we're so devoid of talent. Who knows? And then now a 10th pick, 5 and 11 is the Saints. 11th pick is San Francisco at 6 and 9 because they haven't played their Monday night game yet. Colts at 12, Dallas at Cowboys at 13, Arizona at 14. Those are all 7 and 9. Miami's at 15, 8 and 8. Cincinnati 8 and 8, 16. Falcons 8 and 8, 17. Tied with Seattle because they still have to play too. So now then 19 through the rest, 18 through the rest. We'll see. So, Patriots top 3, they were 3rd pick last year. If they get the number 1 pick again now, like that's pretty sick for, if Mayo's out, that's a pretty desirable coaching destination, which Vrabel's already said, if I don't get the Ohio State job, I want this job. I was like, okay, there's continuity there. Tennessee, terrible. There goes one of the quarterbacks for sure. The Browns are gonna Brown, so that's a 3rd pick, and then the Giants. But like, I thought it was so funny that the Giants were, in line for the number 1 pick. They beat the Colts, and then they play Philly next week. So to have the offseason Hard Knocks have 5 or 6 conversations where at the level of, if Saquon goes to the division, I'm not going to be able to sleep. And then it's like how Joe Shane works, how Dable's kind of the personality's weird. It's like you're never going to see that level of access again. Even the Bears took a note like immediately and didn't share too much.
Right.
But to go from the 1 to the 4, like you got to say lose the game. Like I never will say losing is for the sake of a draft pick is like the way to build a culture or it's a good idea. But come on, man. I mean, come on.
Well, they don't seem to need to like do too much to lose the game just because they could just prepare like normal. And
3 touchdowns in the first quarter or the first half, excuse me. Like that, who saw that coming?
That's true. The Bears, they probably won't, and they'll probably get the worst draft pick they possibly could. But at least you'll get a jump start on that winning culture.
Oh, no shit. So we had the year we had 1-1 and we traded to Carolina, we picked 9. Last year, we had 1 and 9 because our pick was 9. And we're sitting right at 9 right now. So what does 3 years or number 9 picks get you? It gets you solid right tackle, solid wide receiver. We'll see what Odunze. And then I hope it gets you a badass left tackle. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think draft offensive line with every pick is what the Bears need to do.
Yeah, we have 3 picks in the top like 50 right now. So that means we have Carolina's 2nd round pick. So yeah, of those 3 picks, it better be 2 offensive linemen and a defensive lineman. And, one of those offensive linemen better be a center.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Anyway, that was impromptu. So fantasy, I need Debo to not score 60 points, and I'm going to win my one league there. Otherwise, I finished 7 out of 10 and 9 out of 12 in my other league. So not great. Got eliminated second week in the guillotine. Not great. But this championship winning should pay for my habit this year and next. Before we hopped on the call, you were talking about your pick'ems.
Yes.
Sounds like you had a hot week. What are you looking forward to?
Hot week. Yeah, no, already got the Pick'em League locked up. So it's like 42 teams. You pay $5 a week. Honestly, you can join in the middle of the season if you want, but essentially just means I'm taking $5 from everyone this week, and got it locked up going into Monday. That's nice. I'm still alive in the family semifinals. Need 60 points between Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs, so we'll see. It's possible. Hopefully the Niners make it interesting.
Yeah.
I also did, on the note of the Lions versus the Niners, I did see an interesting tweet because Dan Campbell came out and was like, we're playing this game just like every other game. We're not resting starters. We're going to go out there and win this game. And then someone
like that.
But someone replied, like, that's a really bold thing to do on the same field that's ended the season for like 4 San Francisco running backs this season in a meaningless game. Then I was like, ooh, that is a good point. Like, they have been, like, and if you lost Jahmyr Gibbs on that field.
It's not meaningless. Like, let's take that off the table right now. It's not meaningless. They need to win this game to have the conversation to get the first round bye when they play you next week.
No.
So if they lose
and then win next week, our records will be the same and they'll have the tiebreaker. As far as I know.
So they're 13-2.
Yep.
You guys are 14-2. If they lose, they'll be 13-3.
Right, and if they win next week, they'll be 14-3, as will the Vikings, and they'll have the tiebreaker.
Okay, I'm with you.
So that's why this game is kind of meaningless.
I'm with you on the injuries thing, but man, I cannot. Their team is already depleted and they're winning games. Like, I'm not going to be a fan of take your foot off the gas. Like, between
that's
that
true.
And if they get the bye, like, more rust and bad habits, like that's got playoff upset written all over it.
No, I agree with you, but if they do lose someone like Jahmyr Gibbs, that's gonna look so bad in retrospect.
But yeah, I mean,
you're kind of screwed either way.
Like, think about it this way: with him, it's like, oh, if you don't get it here on fourth down, it's like, fuck it, I'm going for it on fourth down. That's who we are. So I think it's more of like that, because you can twist whatever you want. And if they do get the bye, like, oh, it's such a good thing that they did this, and now they're gonna get healthy and da da da. It's like, yeah, but then you got the rust factor, which is so real. And the head case that Goff is, like, he might not be as consistent after that much downtime. So it can go either way. I'll have to keep an eye on the field tonight, though. Good point.
Yeah. It's all I got at stake. I've been eliminated everywhere else. So, hey, but the pick'ems will pay for my habit this year.
Hell yeah.
And next year. And I got some like best ball stuff going on. I did like 1 week of sports betting on like a 4-leg parlay that won. I made like one bet this season on a 4-leg parlay that paid out like $120. So like I'm up on the year. You know, I think I'm gonna like come out neutral on like my best ball draft. So, you know, it's been a good season.
For sure. Well, good deal. That's what I've got for this week. Week 17. Where are you at?
Yeah, that's about it. Unless you want to talk about the Bears more.
I'd rather shoot myself.
Well, in that case, I think we can put a bow on this one. Run the North, week 17. Jason and Will. We'll catch you next time.